I don't personally believe that you're here to grind your soul to dust working a 9 to 5. I personally feel like you're here and destined for more, especially if you're watching this video. Out of the thousands and thousands, probably millions at this point, of videos on YouTube, you found this one. So today we're going to pour into your cup, provide you value, and get you understanding fully what your frequency is, because this is a very powerful concept. So there's many different ways to break down what your frequency is. I personally like to use Dr. Joe Dispenza's model of your personality creates your personal reality. So that's essentially what a frequency is. And to break that down, he just says it's how you think, how you act, I don't really want to write feel in red. Like, that kind of feels bloody, doesn't it? Like if you're in pain all the time, you probably think of feel being in red, but like that's not what we're going for here. So how you feel, boom, nice purple, even though this purple mark was dying now. But how you think, how you act, and how you feel, these core things create your frequency, which essentially creates your personality. So why is this important? Well, if you're thinking the same negative thoughts every single day, day in, day out, if you are behaving in the same way, whether that be positive or negative, is completely, usually determined by how you're thinking. And how you're thinking is usually determined how you feel. So if you feel the same every day, if you're feeling negative every day, then you're going to create a negative personality. And if you create a negative personality, you're creating a negative frequency. Now, the interesting thing about frequency is that everything in the universe is communicating. I learned that actually from a remote viewer named Dick Algier. I interviewed him on my Praise the Sun podcast. I don't know if you ever seen that, but definitely watch that episode. He said, I'll give you the secrets of the universe. Everything is communicating with each other. Communication. Ooh, don't tell my mama. Ooh, listen. Oh my days. Listen. Communication. I think I actually spelled it right the first time, but my handwriting was so sloppy that it looked like hieroglyphics and it freaked me out. Okay, so everything in the universe is communicating with each other, including your frequency with the perceivably external world. And if we want to create a reality in which we are experiencing high vibratory synchronicities, then we need to get our frequency locked in, dialed in at a level that it stays there, so we can continue to have the things that we want to attract into our lives. That's the hardest part, right? The law of attraction, what you think and the energy of how you feel is what you attract to you. Okay, we understand that. Like, this isn't new concepts, but why is it so difficult for the people on this planet who believe? I'm gonna have a completely different video talking about why it's important to know this and not believe it. But why is it that the people who follow these principles are still not unable to attract into their life their desired reality? It's because it's incredibly difficult to maintain a high frequency. It is really hard. You have your external environment that is constantly trying to lower your frequency. If the first thing you do when you wake up is grab your phone, depending on how your algorithm is catered to you, usually with something like Twitter or X as they call it, there's going to be a good chance that you're going to see something that disturbs you and lowers your frequency. If you've been looking at cat videos and puppy videos all day on on your algorithm on whatever social platform you use, then maybe not so, right? For the very few people who are just looking at those type of videos, you might actually see something that raises your vibration. But I personally believe that the very act of just reaching for your phone creates the chance of you lowering your frequency. So instead of us doing that, we know for a fact, at some point we have to use our phone, but it doesn't have to be as soon as you wake up. If you first instead do any of the dozens of things that can that raise your frequency as soon as you wake up, instead of grabbing your phone, we're off to a good start. So when you wake up, if you do something like meditate, you can journal. It depends. I usually write down my dreams if it's something like super significant, but if it's not, then I just don't worry about it. You can still journal if you want to, but you can meditate, you can journal, you can do some yoga. So you can do yoga, you can do exercise. Like, there's so many different things that you can do to raise your frequency as soon as you wake up that don't involve your phone. Now, if you're someone like me who uses a meditation app, not necessarily a meditation app, but it has meditation in it, I just use the Stoic app, and I use our little feature to measure how long I meditate. That's all I'm using my phone for. But if you kind of not go that route and go using social media, then you're gonna mess yourself up. So we understand already, really early in the video, we've already broken down what your frequency is. It's your personality. It's how you think, how you act, and how you feel. And if we have a sliding scale for a frequency, so let's say that we have a scale 1 to 10. Okay? We want to be as close in all of these things to a 10 as possible every single day. Now, is that realistic? No, because there's always going to be something around you, or something that you have to do, or something external to you that will lower your frequency. But focus on what I just said. There's always going to be something external to you that's going to lower your frequency. If you can read that, it says internal. Your internal world is what you can control. I'm really looking forward to seeing the progression of my handwriting throughout the coming months. I hope you all look forward to it as well. But your internal world is the only thing that you can control, which is great, because your internal world affects your external world. So if you can maintain a high frequency in your internal world, you will then be in alignment with the highest version of yourself, the highest frequency of yourself, the highest likelihood of success, that person in that reality who's likely to have the highest chance of success if you can do the things that they do. So if you can think the way they think, if you can act the way they act, and if you can feel the way that they feel on an internal basis, your external reality will have no choice but to reflect what you are feeling internally. Now, I understand, believe me, I'm an extremely pragmatic person, and I understand how simplified and how maybe perhaps unrealistic that can sound. And yet there are thousands of people out there who do this, who are experiencing their highest frequency, their highest joy, their highest synchronicity, their highest alignment. So why would you be one of the few who have a limiting belief system about how this works because you need perhaps more evidence or more proof or more this and that, things that your egoic self need to hold on to in order for it to create its reality. But the problem is that version of you can only experience what you currently are experiencing. So if you are experiencing a lackluster reality based upon your frequency, then the only reality that you can continue to experience is what you are currently experiencing. So of course your egoic self doesn't want to change. Of course it doesn't want to believe in things that raise your frequency and change your external reality. Of course it doesn't want to experience literally anything other than the comfortable reality that you've been constantly experiencing for who knows how long. Why? Because comfort is what the ego seeks. Is what the mind seeks constantly, all the time. Your mind is a survival mechanism. It's designed to survive. And by surviving, if you can stay comfortable, you will survive. As in current stances, perhaps not during caveman times, but even then we were perhaps a little bit more ambitious than we are now. So let's break down the ego, because the ego is a very, very tricky thing that really jams up pretty much everyone, because it requires you to have a higher level of awareness, a higher frequency than it. Okay, so the ego. The ego is the centralized focal sense of self that helps create your perception of this matrix, this reality that you're living in. Okay, so your ego contains your frequency, but it also contains your shadow. Now, I'm just going to talk about the ego here because the shadow is a very complex thing. It's not so much as easy to just say that your shadow is just you, because it's not. There's the shadow that you have created for you yourself in this particular reality. There's the accumulation of people's shadows, which is like generational trauma that you get from parents, grandparents. That's that shadow. Then there's like I would say like a 5D version of shadow that exists within the collective consciousness. That's a shadow as well, which is a higher version of that shadow, which is the accumulation of all the experiences on this planet. And just focusing on this planet, because there's, multitudes of that, but we're going to focus on this one right here, because this is probably the easiest to work with. And then you can go into the other deeper versions of shadows that are withheld within the body. So the shadow contains the negative experiences. So that can be trauma, that can be things that happened to you when you were younger, that can be things that happened to you when you were in high school, that can be things that happened to you, family members. There are things that happened that didn't happen directly to you, but the pain and suffering, you brought that into your body and pushed that into the shadow. So it's like, it's pretty much, if there is duality in life following the Hermetic principles, there's the light version of you and there's the dark version of you. The dark version lives in this ego. Okay, and the dark version, the shadow, all it wants to experience is more negativity. That's all it wants to experience. It wants to experience more pain. It wants to experience more suffering. It wants to experience more scarcity. I'm not, listen, we're gonna work on my hand right now. I'm sorry. Anyways, it wants to experience a lot of these lower forms of energy, because it wants to what? It wants to lower your frequency because it itself is a low frequency. And if it can create circumstances to feed off of that lower energy, then it can perpetuate itself into essentially forever, because it's the shadow. And the shadow needs more negativity, more pain, more suffering, more of those things to sustain itself. There's a reason why you want to be attracted towards a higher reality where you're happy, where you're successful, where you're abundant, where you're doing all the things that you want to do. Is because the light also feeds on the light. So as you try to project yourself into this higher reality, into this higher frequency, you want to then accumulate more events like that so you can sustain that reality, because it feels good to be loved, to experience love, to experience success, to experience the reality. If you're an abundant person, to be able to give constantly to other people, those things feel good in a way that is constructive for not only the individual but the people that you're working with. So light attracts light. Well, dark attracts dark as well, and the darkness in you wants to attract more darkness so it can continue to experience more darkness, so it can perpetuate the subconscious belief systems which are negative. If it's the shadow, there are subconscious negative belief systems that it wants to uphold and sustain within inside of itself so that it can continue to live in that reality. So the problem is this ego, which contains the shadow, wants the polar opposite of what your higher self wants. And your higher self wants you to polarize yourself in a way where you can be in high vibrations, in a high frequency. And because there's free will, we have this subconscious manifested form, unmanifested form that is constantly influencing our external reality. So now that we've established what is it that prevents you from staying in this higher sense of self, let's talk about how to get conscious, how to be aware of when this shadow, the sneaky egoic figure is trying to manipulate and ruin your life. Can we talk for a minute? And I want to know your name. If you is black and you don't know that song, I am revoking that black card today, boss man. Today. All right, so I titled this part "Win the Battle." There is an internal struggle within inside of you every single day when you are presented with the opportunity to make a choice. This is the pivotal moment when you are branching timelines, okay? So we haven't gotten into the quantum mechanics aspect of it yet. We'll probably get more into depth in that in a different video, but there are essentially points every single day where you are presented with a choice. You can go down point A or point B. This is an oversimplified version because there's an infinite number of things that you can do, but let's just say you're at a point where you could either walk to the park because you got this crazy intuitive insight, like you should walk to the park today. You can go to the park, or you can just sit at home and play the game, or watch Netflix, or watch just completely just be distracted and waste your time and do nothing. Now, you don't know why you just got this intuitive hit to go to the park. You don't know why this information just came to you. You're not really sure about it, but you're just like, fuck it, I'll go. I'll just go check out the park. Okay, so you go to the park and there's a person that you meet there who has been waiting for you. And you don't know this person, but you start having this conversation with this person. And this person actually this person has an opportunity for you, and you are just the exact person that they need for this. This isn't a fairy tale. This is real life. This is things that happen to people who are able to maintain a high frequency. If you ever seen Everything Everywhere All at Once, and how they have to do this random thing to then shift to parallel versions of realities, that's quite literally how it is in this reality. Sometimes you'll be getting these intuitive hits that are completely illogical to your logical mind. Do this. Do this. You don't know why you're getting these ideas to do certain things, but you just try to go with it. That is the cosmic secret. That is the cosmic joke as well, is that the logic that you have created for yourself is based on Maya, as the Hindus call it, which is this dream realm, the reality matrix. Everything that your logical mind knows is only illusions and patterns. The deepest part of you, the one that wants you to align with this frequency, understands the actual fundamental nature of reality, the actual mechanism for what your logical mind is perceiving. It's the person on the hill looking out over the field, and your mind, your egoic self, is the one who's just the narrow vision, looking, trying to figure out how you're going to navigate through all of this. And the higher self is saying, hey, yeah, go here, make this turn, make a left, go here. But you can't hear that communication going on because of the shadow self. So to bring it all the way back to that winning the battle, there's the egoic self that wants to just be comfortable. It wants to be distracted. It wants to have all fun with no risk. Oh, Jesus Christ. It wants to have all fun with no risk. Why? I'm glad you asked that question. Because it wants to be comfortable. And when you're comfortable, the mind doesn't perceive of it taking risk. Me making this video is me taking risks. Although I don't really care what people's perception of me is. So if I look silly or goofy or whatever, it's my pleasure and joy to serve the infinite creator. So I'm doing my job, baby. I'm doing my job. We're having fun. So there's an aspect of you that just wants to be comfortable, distracted, have all this fun, take no risk, enjoy, just being a consumer. And there's a part of you that wants to raise your frequency and be a creator and get in alignment with your higher self. Winning the battle every single day means having the awareness to understand that you have the choice in how you react to every single thought and emotion that comes into your awareness that wants to deviate you to a different pathway, that wants to distract you to go down this pathway, that wants to lead you down a pathway where you do not belong, where you do not need to be there. There's a version of you that's there because all things exist simultaneously right here, right now. And you can get in alignment with that version of you, or you can take a chance, you can take a risk, and you can work on your frequency every single day, get in alignment with your higher self every single day, be in awareness of the self-sabotaging thoughts, the doubts, the fears, the uncertainty. Get comfortable with that. Learn how to get comfortable with that. Learn how to integrate those feelings. Otherwise, it goes to the ego. It goes to the shadow. It goes to that place that doesn't want to actually grow. It's fearful of growth, because growth is what? Uncomfortable. By nature, the very structure of growing, if you go to the gym, you are ripping your muscle fibers to get stronger. If you have osteoporosis and you're trying to get your bones stronger, compression over time is actually what makes your bones stronger, which is what? Stress. So stress is the number one factor in growth. It's the number one determining factor in growth. Guess what? Same thing for frequency. Don't you think it's difficult to think positively every single day? Don't you think it's difficult to act in a way that's in alignment with your higher self? Don't you think it's hard to feel certain things every day? If it did, I swear to God, if it didn't, you wouldn't be watching this video right now. You'd just be living a good life. But it's not easy. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because practice over time makes it easier. I've been meditating since 2015 when I got out of the military. It was incredibly difficult for me to meditate. I could not sit in a room with myself in darkness and be by myself and be alone. I was terrified. My mind was terrified. Even though I was at home by myself, nothing going on. But the mind, whatever it's conditioned to believe, whatever way it's conditioned to think, act, and feel, that's going to be your external reality. So I knew that reality for a fact. And yet I stuck with the meditation. I stuck with working on myself. I stuck with working through the difficult things that I just didn't want to deal with. And it got easier, and it got easier, and it got easier. So I'm telling you, this stuff is real. This frequency stuff is real. You can create the reality that you want to live in and thrive in. The problem is that it's difficult because you're going into battle with yourself. You're going into battle with your ego. You're going into battle with your shadow every single day, multiple times a day, when you're trying to create a new identity. It's stressful. And pretty much it feels like death to that version of you. The crazy part is that I know a lot of people say that that version of you has to die for you to become that new version of yourself. I do not feel that that is true. If every single version of you exists right here, right now, then all you have to do is get into alignment with that version of you that exists right here, right now. That means this version of you, you're shifting out of phase with it. How is that death? If all things exist here and now, you're just shifting into a different version of yourself. This version of you is always going to exist. You don't think that's the case? Have you ever seen someone that's addicted to a drug who relapses? What happened to that version of themselves? I thought it was dead and gone. They're sober now, and yet they relapse into that person again. It's because that version of you always exists, and it will always exist. And that should give joy. That should give happiness to that part of you that's so reluctant to change. Because the main thing that everyone's afraid of is just passing away. I'm not going to use a D word. It's passing away. But it doesn't have to be that way. You just need a reframing and understanding what's actually happening, which is just you are shifting your frequency. You are shifting to a better version of you that exists right here, right now. I hope that was helpful. If you found this video useful, you know what to do. If you want to work with me, link in bio. Deuces.